Hello, everyone. It's great to be here today. My name is Osama Albishri, and I will talk with you today about public relations in Saudi Arabia. Let me share my presentation. Okay. Let me begin by introducing myself. So, my name is Albishri. I am first year doctoral student in international communication at the University of Florida. Uh, I was born and raised in a tiny village to the north of Mecca, the capital city of the Muslim world, which is located in Saudi Arabia. I got my bachelor degree in Arabic literature in around 2009. Then I got my first master degree in education administration and planning from Al Qura University in Mecca. After that, I worked as a Arabic teacher at a middle school in Saudi Arabia for 1 year. Then I worked as administrative assistant at King Abdulaziz University for almost 2 years. Then I was hired by the Department of Communication at King Abdulaziz University to work as teaching assistant. Um, I worked there for 2 years. Then I got a full scholarship from the university to come to the United States and study English and then do my master and PhD in communication. So I came to the United States at the beginning of 2014. I started to learn English. I didn't speak any English at all when I came in 2014. So I started to learn English at University of Oregon. I spent 1 year over there. Then I moved to Lewis and Clark College in Portland, Oregon. Then I continued to study English for another year. By the beginning of 2016, I came to University of Florida as master student in international communication. I just graduated 3 months ago. Then right away, I continued to do my PhD in international communication at University of Florida. So this is a little bit about myself and my educational background. Um, regarding the public relation, although I haven't worked as a full-time employee in media industry nor in public relation industry, but I have worked closely with several newspaper. I wrote some articles for newspaper, and I also I work on occasion with public relation department at King Abdulaziz University. Um, so today all my topic will be about public relations, but I'll give you an overview about the country itself, its culture, education in Saudi Arabia, and some of the challenges for public relation practitioners. So here is my outline for my presentation today. I'll give you an overview about Saudi Arabia, and I also discuss some of the common stereotypes that people have in mind about Saudi Arabia. Then I'm going to move to talk about education and public relations program in Saudi Arabia. Then I'll talk about some of the cultural differences. I'll compare it to the Western culture or the US culture. And I'll talk about some of the PR challenges in Saudi Arabia, and I will end up with some suggestion for how PR practitioners can succeed in Saudi Arabia. So let's begin with an overview of about Saudi Arabia. So Saudi Arabia is one of the Middle Eastern countries, and it's located to the south of Syria and Iraq, and to the north of Yemen, and it's located in the Arabian Peninsula. The modern state or the modern Saudi states was founded in 1932 by King Abdulaziz University, um, who came and unified the tribes and territories in Saudi Arabia. He spent like 30 years to unify most of the Arabian uh, peninsula. Um, the Arabic is the spoken language in Saudi Arabia, and it is the official language. Not so many people speak English in Saudi Arabia, although we start to learn English in school since the elementary education, but teaching English or the quality of teaching English is really poor in Saudi Arabia. So you might find that people have a bachelor degree in English. This means they spent like 4 years of their life studying English. And when they come to the United States and take a placement test, they put them in level 2. So it's really poor quality when it comes to teaching English in Saudi Arabia. Um, um, the country is divided into 13 provinces. Uh, um, Riyadh is the capital city of Saudi Arabia. Um, Jeddah, Mecca, and Ad-Dammam is one of the biggest cities in Saudi Arabia. And you may all know that Saudi Arabia is the birthplace of Islam. So Islam started from Mecca with Prophet Muhammad. Then he moved to Medina, so both cities are located in Saudi Arabia. So Saudi Arabia is the custodian of the two holy cities and two holy mosques in Islam. And even the Saudi king is called the custodian of the two holy mosques. This is his nickname. The Saudi currency is the Saudi riyal, and $1 is equal 3.75 riyal. As you know, most of you are familiar with Saudi Arabia as being one of the major oil producers in the world. So it is a leading producer of oil and natural gas. And oil contribute to like nearly over 93% of the budget revenues in Saudi Arabia. So it's so dependent in oil, and this has caused a problem to the Saudi Arabia, because whenever the oil prices come down, this is create an economic issue and panic in Saudi Arabia. So this is why Saudi Arabia recently launched its Vision 2030, and its main goal is to diversify its revenue and not depend solely on oil. The population of Saudi Arabia is around 32 million, and two-thirds of them are Saudi citizens, and there are nearly 10 million who are not citizens, are migrants, but they didn't grant, they don't have the citizenship. Finally, two-thirds of the Saudi Arabia are under the age of 30. And this is really important to know, because most of the plan in the Saudi Vision 30 is focused toward the youth and empowering the youth, and give them more opportunities and make them more competitive in the workforce. So now let's move to some of the common stereotypes about Saudi Arabia. I think it's important to mention this here, because we all have stereotypes about other countries and about other cultures, and Saudi Arabia is not an exception. So yeah, here are some of the stereotypes. For example, people have stereotype about Saudi Arabia. They are super rich, and they might have oil in their homes, and this is not completely true. I mean, Saudi citizens are not are like any other citizen in the world. I mean, some of them are poor, some of them are, and most of them are in the middle class, uh, and a few are rich. So it is not. I mean, it is not right to say that all Saudis are rich. Another common stereotype is that women are not allowed to work, and this is completely false because women do work in Saudi Arabia, and if you go to most places and ministry, you will see women uh, making um, significant proportion of the workforce at any Saudi agency or institution, or even in the public sector. Next is women are not educated, and this is completely false because uh, if you look back like 60 years ago to Saudi Arabia, there were no education for women in Saudi Arabia 60 years ago. They started with King Faisal. They allowed them to go to school, uh, and they started to go to school. And now, Saudi females, they make like 50% of the college students uh, in Saudi universities. So half of the students in Saudi Arabia are female. And if you look to the statistic by the Ministry of Education and Saudi Arabia, you will notice that even for uh, public education, uh, more than half of the students are actually female. Um, the next is that Saudi ride camels out in the desert. This is, I mean, I hear this often, and this is not completely true because, I mean, I haven't ridden camel in my life. I mean, I'm a Saudi. I love camels. I eat camels. I mean, I drink their milk, but I have not ridden camels. And we do love to go to the desert. Uh, Finally, it is unsafe for Westerners to travel to Saudi Arabia. And I can assure you it is completely safe. I mean, I had this experience where one day I took my car to the mechanic and I told him, I'm going to leave my car at your place for like 2 weeks and I'm going to travel abroad. He asked, where are you going? And I told him I'm going to Saudi Arabia. And he said, be safe. I mean, and be careful over there. I asked him why. And he started to talk about all the stereotypes that he has in his mind about Saudi Arabia and what he heard in media. So uh, it is totally safe to go to Saudi Arabia, although it's hard to get the visa to go to Saudi Arabia if you are not Muslim or like if you are not a businessman or woman. But now they are talking about giving uh, tourist visa to anyone who willing to come to Saudi Arabia, and they're gonna issue such visa soon. Uh, Education in Saudi Arabia, and I'm gonna talk about education in general in Saudi Arabia. Then I'm gonna focus on PR education in Saudi Arabia. So, in general, the like I said, the education in Saudi Arabia is offered for free at any level. I mean, at the public, the elementary, the middle school, the high school, and also the college. Uh, uh, Education is for free, and also the graduate level is for free, either as master or PhD level. It's offered for free. So far, we have around 30 public universities in Saudi Arabia and many other private universities and colleges in the country. Um, and also, we have a really good scholarship program that was started in 2005 by, it's called King Abdullah Scholarship Program. It was started in 2005 after an agreement between President Bush and King Abdullah uh, to give the Saudi students the opportunity to go uh, to any place in the world, especially in the United States, and get their higher education. Um, so we have 100,000 of Saudi students who get advantage of such program, and they travel abroad, they study, they had a bachelor or master or even doctoral degree um, from over 55 countries worldwide. So if you can see to the infographic here, I know it's in Arabic, but at least the numbers are in English. So you can see here, where is the highlighter? So you can see here currently, and this I got those statistics for 2017. There are nearly 190,000 students who study abroad, and they are fully covered and fully supported by of education in Saudi Arabia. They get their tuition paid, they got health insurance, and they got also monthly salaries, and they got annual ticket back home for every summer or even in the Christmas holiday. So in the United States, we have over 66,000 students, and with their dependent, they make up about 100,000 in total. Um, so I am one of the students who are covered by such program. I got all my tuition and my health insurance, and I got monthly salary from the Saudi government. And this is one of the really good opportunity and one of the best educational opportunities that you can find in Saudi Arabia. Okay, speaking of PR in Saudi Arabia, we have a few, like I said, we have 30 public university, but we only have like 6 or 7 universities that is teaching mass media or public relation. And actually, we have only 2 or 3 university that are teaching public relation in Saudi Arabia. And what I noticed, because like I said, I work at the College of Media and Communication at King Abdulaziz University in Saudi Arabia. And what I noticed, there are is a lack of practical training for students, and also lack of graduate level program. So we imagine that in Saudi Arabia we are like how many population? 32 million. We only have one doctoral program in public relations. Okay, how they gonna like compensate for this? Uh, Through the King Abdullah Scholarship Program. Right now, we have over 600 students who specialized in mass communication and public relation in the United States. Now, let's me talk about the cultural differences between the Saudi culture and the US culture. And I won't be able to cover all the cultural differences um, in this lecture, but I'm going to highlight some of the differences. So first, one of the differences is the differences in terms of the individual versus collectivism. Saudi Arabia is a collectivistic society, and they place great value not only in their physical family but also in their spiritual family. And member of the society act for the good of the group, um, not for the interest of the individuals. And this is reflected in long-term commitment to the member of the group. So a close family, extended family, or extended relationship. So loyalty is the most important trait in the collectivistic culture, and everyone is responsible for the other member of their group. So societies cultivate a good relationship. So the responsibility for the group members is built into the Saudi Arabian society, and decision in work setting often involve perception of one's group orientation. And you will notice oftentimes that family, friends, and connection will be given priority over business process in Saudi Arabia. And this is one of the issues in the collectivistic culture. The social system are highly formalized, and knowing a person place in society is more important than developing effective communication or effective media relation or communication campaign. Um, so they emphasize in the importance of the group rather than the importance of individual. And also they tend to be like supportive to each other, looking for each other. For example, if you go to Saudi Arabia, you will not find any homeless people in Saudi Arabia. So homelessness does not exist in Saudi Arabia, and this is not the case, for example, in individualistic cultures. For example, if you came to the United States, you'll notice homeless in the street, and when you ask people, they will say it is his or her responsibility to find a job. This is not the case in Saudi Arabia, because if people, for example, so like a family sleeping in the street, they will immediately try to help them and find accommodation and provide accommodation for them. Next, masculinity and femininity. Saudi Arabia has one of the largest male-female gaps, and I would say that Saudi is a masculine society, and the masculine country, as you know, live in order to work, and managers are expected always to be decisive, and I'm not gonna say aggressive, but like decisive and confident, and to emphasize fair and competitive performance, they must better or battle and conflict resolutions. Uh, there are clearly defined gender role and expectation in Saudi Arabia, but I would say recently Saudi Arabia is trying to empower women and give them more opportunities and more position in the government institution, uh, as part of uh, the crown prince, the new crown prince plan to reform or to apply domestic reforms in Saudi Arabia and to modernize the Saudi social and political life. Next is low context versus high context. I would say each culture has a combination of both, but you might notice, for example, some of the culture leaning toward being high context, using context communication. So Saudi Arabia is a high context culture. This is fit with the collectivistic characteristic of the Saudi Arabia. So the kingdom use high context communication, mean that current environment and body language are depends upon the person who received the message to understand and interpret the message. So they use body language, facial expression, eye contact, gestures, all these to communicate the messages and make the messages more ambiguous uh, and brief. So it's the leave it for the um, receivers to interpret and understand the message. So it is less verbally explicit communication and less written formal information, and it's more internalized understanding of what is communicated. Um, Time and punctuality, and this is one of the theme that you will notice in the entire Arab world or the entire Middle East. They are not. Uh, so if they tell you like they come 9 a.m., they will not come. I mean, if they come like 9:10, that's good. It's mean that they are like being on time. So we having issues in terms of punctuality, and most of the government institution work from 8 to 2 p.m. and the private sectors they usually vary, but sometimes usually they work from 9 to 5, and the work days from Sunday um, to Wednesday. So from Sunday to Wednesday and um, Friday. Friday and Saturday is a holiday. So we have a big issue in terms of punctuality. So if you are a public relation practitioners in Saudi Arabia, do not be frustrated if people did not show up on time. Next, um, emphasizing the past. I would say Saudi Arabia and most of the Arab culture is more attached to the past and to their ancestors. So they have great pride in their history and they trust the knowledge and judgment of their ancestors who effectively contributed to the science and knowledge of humanity. And also they established long lived empire. So they trust their ancestor sometimes more than so that sometimes they trust that their ancestors know more than what is known in the present. Uh, so it is important to be mindful of that and also take that into consideration when you are developing public relation campaign. And I'm going to mention that later. Next is resistance to change. Um, in general, most of the conservative, Saudi Arabia is a conservative society. No one can deny that. But uh, so most of the conservative society have some high resistance to change. We hear always that, for example, the religious establishment or some of the society's member, they resist women education in Saudi Arabia when it first announced 60 years ago. And they also resist the adopting the radio or the satellite or any, even the phone with camera. They almost resist anything. But with the current crown prince, Mohammed bin Salman, who came in 2015, he applied so much change in Saudi Arabia. For example, you might be familiar with that women are not allowed to drive in Saudi Arabia. They are now allowed to drive. And there is a lot going on in Saudi Arabia. Another thing is the cinema. There are no cinema in Saudi Arabia right now, but recently they announced that they will start giving permission to movie theater to be established in Saudi Arabia. All these changes have occurred in the past like 1 or 2 years, and we are hoping for more. And I noticed that the level of resistance has changed and follow uh, follow the lead of the political power. Finally, I would mention that for regarding the assessment or criticism, if you are a public relation practitioners who happen to work on in Saudi Arabia, try to avoid giving like personal criticism or assessment in front of other people. So uh, tend to take it personally if you like criticize their work, or like they find it like sense with sense of humiliation, or disregarding to their work. So if you um, if you are trying to give an assessment to your like workmate or to your colleague, try to do this in behind door and in an individual meeting, not in front of the other member. This is really important for not only Saudi but also for Arab, because they might take it personally, and then this will affect their work in the long run. Uh, Now let's talk about the challenges of public relation development and practices in Saudi Arabia. There are so many challenges, but I'm just I think the most important five, um, and you can search for more if you want. So one of the biggest issues in public relation practices and also development in Saudi Arabia is uh, the management's attitudes toward the profession, or their perception of the public relations. So uh, you will mostly find that the top management and their perception is about public relation is center around, or concentrate guest relation, protocol, receptions, uh, relationship with the media, providing or distributing brochures and publications. All these kind of secondary activities are um, contributed, or is the perception of the management of now we will discuss some of the challenges that public relation practitioners face in Saudi Arabia. Now let's talk about some of the challenges that public relation practitioners may encounter in Saudi Arabia. And there are so many challenges and issues that is related to public relation practices in Saudi Arabia, but I'm going to focus on only five, and you can for more if you want. Uh, the biggest issues when we talk about public relations in Saudi Arabia is the top management perception or attitude toward the profession. So most of the management perception of public relation is centered around they use public relation, think of public relation as a tool for publicity, for positive propaganda, and uh, and also they think that public relation is concentrate on guest relation, protocol, relation with developing relation with media distribution, distributing brochures and publications. All these kind of secondary activities done at the expense of essentials. So changing this perception of the top management is quite important. So public relation is not giving a priority nor the importance in the corporate system or the institution system. And public relation practitioners are not usually being involved in the decision-making process nor in the planning for the company vision. Another challenges, and this is you will notice will affect all the following, create more and more challenges, and it will be reflected on the subsequent issues. Another issue is lack of training and qualifications. Like I said, um, only 2 or 3 universities in Saudi Arabia provide an education or programs in public relations, and some of these programs are not focused solely in public relation, but they give so much courses on other subject that has nothing to do with public relation. For example, one of the master program in public relations in Saudi Arabia, when I saw their course description and their degree plan, I saw the degree plan is 3 years. Only 1 semester is dedicated to public relation courses, and this with level, and you can imagine what's happened in the undergrad level. And another issue is that students are not being involved in training, practical training. So they are not, most of the time they are not being sent to corporates or offer internship to go and practice public relation over there. And if you go to any government institution or any corporate, to the public relation department at any corporate or government institution, you will notice that there are so many employees in these departments that has no background at all in public relation. I mean, they mostly think that anyone can do public relation, anyone can handle this job. Uh, Welcoming the guest and do the protocol and distributing publication brochure. Anyone can handle the public relation jobs, and so they don't have like genuine understanding of what is public relation is, what the actual values and tasks of public relations. Also, because of this issue, the second issue, public relation practitioners are given poor position in the organizational chart. They are not being paid well, and they are not being appreciated, I mean, among their colleagues. For the same issue I just mentioned, that they say that anyone can do public. So why do we give them like a high position? And I mean, this is mostly the case, but if you go to, for example, to Aramco, the biggest oil company in Saudi Arabia, it's the only oil company in Saudi Arabia, but it is one of the biggest in the world. You'll see the executive manager of Aramco was actually public relation practitioners like 20 or 30 years ago. So this is not a common case to find in Saudi Arabia, but it happened that in some of and actually Aramco is one of the best companies in Saudi Arabia when we talk about PR. Companies is trying to imitate the experiment of or the model of Aramco when it comes to PR. Another issue with related to public relation, and this is actually an issue for many other fields like public relation, it's the high job security. So in Saudi Arabia, if you are an employee in Saudi Arabia, especially if you work for the government, it is hard for any manager to kick you out with the job if you are not being productive and perform well. So this is create an issue for many departments, especially in the public relation department. So if you are not being productive, you are not committed to your work, if you are not creative, if you are not, no one will pick you up and no one will can fire you, even your immediate boss or immediate manager. Finally, I would say the lack of resources, and this is one of the biggest challenges for public relation practitioners. We can talk a lot about resources. One of the biggest resource is the research. So research is one of the main drawback of public relation practice in Saudi Arabia, and this affect negatively the outputs and performance of public relation. So, one cannot have strategy and efficient planning without uh, sound research, opinion poll, and content analysis. So you will not, it is rarely that companies and public relations departments rely on research to develop their planning and public relation campaign. So this brings me to the next slide. How public relation practitioners can succeed in Saudi Arabia. So I listed some of the elements that I think it's important for international public relation practitioners to know, and this will help them if they come to Saudi Arabia and practice or any part of the Arab world and practice public relations. So the first one is emotional appeals. So emotional appeals are more likely to be persuasive in Saudi Arabia than logical appeals. So practitioners focus and stress uh, that a practice is accord with uh, teaching of Islam and play in the emotional appeals. A message that, for example, include religious elements might use dramatic element and stories which may resonate with some of their cultural background. I would say that so understanding how people think is important for public relation practitioners to succeed. So emotional appeals is important. Second, knowledge about Islam. Islam is the main and only faith that is practiced in Saudi Arabia, and Muslims in general, and Saudi Arabia in particular, are very attached to their religion, and their daily lives and daily practices is centered around religion. When they eat, when they wake up, they pray 5 times a day. If you go to Saudi Arabia, you will see call for adhan and people going to pray everywhere 5 times a day. So most of their life are centered around religion. You will not have any conversation with Saudis or without mentioning of like religion or something related to religion. So none Saudi practitioners or international public relation practitioners need to accommodate religion for successful implementation of public relation campaign in Saudi Arabia. I would say that most of the time that Saudi will or Muslim in general will probably rank whatever has whatever Allah or God and Prophet Muhammad say as more trustworthy than whatever parents, friend, clerics, media, or other would say. So being mindful of that and trying to incorporate that into your public relation campaign would be more effective. Next is respect for social hierarchy. It's important to understand the social order in Saudi Arabia and know that Saudi Arabia, for example, part of the culture is to respect the elder people and to give them like priority, to give priority to their family, having respect for authority, for example, for the teacher. I forget actually to show you a picture. I didn't comment in that picture. So if you see in this picture, sorry. So if you see this man here, this is the current king of Saudi Arabia, and he's bowing to kiss his brother's hand. Uh, this is mm, this is common in Saudi Arabia to show respect for your older brother. I mean, my youngest brothers, they kiss my hand all the time when they see me, for example, and I kiss my mother hand, my father hand. This is you will notice this often in Saudi Arabia. So this is the king of Saudi Arabia, and he's actually bowing to kiss the the hand of his brother. And this is the crown prince of Saudi Arabia, and this is the Saudi ambassador to the United States. He's currently the Saudi ambassador to the United States, and he is kissing his brother hand because this is his older brother. And also, Saudi Arabia or in the Saudi culture, people have tremendous respect for their clerics. So if you notice this, this is the crown prince of Saudi Arabia, and he is kissing the forehead of one of the Saudi clerics. So knowing all of these is important for public relation practitioners because, like I said, Saudis have a tremendous respect to the social order and to the hierarchy, social hierarchy, and the social hierarchy is important. For example, for you, when you develop public relation campaigns, establishing relationships beforehand with political leaders, with clerics, with tribal leaders is important for you if you want to like succeed in your public relation campaign, and also for you as public relation practitioners who are not Saudis, you are encouraged to engage with like I said, with Saudi political leaders and tribal leaders and also social leaders, and establishing such ties with those leaders might be helpful, if not in achieving change in attitudes of the people those leaders exercise power over. It might be helpful in keeping people attitudes or action neutral. And you need also to know that to approach those leaders with great it's important to approach them with great respect, showing their importance and influence on their trusted circle. Practitioners must never show to leader that establishing relationship with them is done with the purpose of, for example, achieving specific goals, even if it's implicitly understood by both parties. Uh, I mean, showing such intention will might be might be harmful, as it shows that relationships is built on materialistic aims, not on a goodwill. So knowing that is really important. Next is understanding the cultural differences. I talked about cultural differences, and it is important to understand those cultural differences because the Saudi culture is so different from the US cultures. For example, I mean, let me give you just a brief example. If you see people or two men uh, holding each other hands, this is indicate a friendship. I mean, they are not being like you might if you see this in the United States, like two men walking together holding each other hand, you might understand it in a different way and have different interpretation. But if you go to Saudi Arabia and see, you will see, notice so many people holding each other hand as showing of a good friendship. Another, for example, cultural differences is try to avoid, for example, admiring an item too much. If you go to, for example, to someone's house or meet a friend over there in Saudi Arabia, try to avoid admiring items you see, like it's common, for example, here in the United States, oh, I like your t-shirt, I like your watch, I like, but if you say this for Saudi in Saudi Arabia, they might give you, for example, if you go, oh, I like your watch, they might take their watch off and feel obligated to give it to you. So be mindful of that. There are, like I said, I can talk forever about cultural differences between the two countries, but the time doesn't allow for that. Think about the past and connect it with and future. Remember when I told you that Arab in general and Saudi Arabia in particular are so attached to their ancestors' heritage and to their past. They often emphasize the past in their conversation. Um, so, as a public relation practitioners, you may take advantage of that, like I said, because they have a great pride in their history. Uh, you may take advantage of that by try when you're developing public relation campaign, try to connect that to their history, try to understand their history, try to connect your messages to their history and emphasize that because this will give you an advantage in the long run. Finally, I want to end up with this: avoid politics. If you are public relation practitioners in Saudi Arabia, Saudi Arabia has different political system. It's not a democratic country. It has different political system than the one United States has. Uh, my advice to you is try to avoid politics in Saudi Arabia because it's so controversial to talk about politics and Saudi Arabia because you might don't know what is the person who you are talking with think about, like democracy, for example. They might think that democracy is like a Western value that does not fit with the tradition of Islam. So, yeah, my advice to you in general is to avoid politics as much as you can. So, those are just brief suggestions for you as public relation practitioners. Uh, I hope I covered most of you are what you are looking for. I read the book chapter that your instructor assigned to you, and I tend to agree with most of what the author said in the chapter. Here's my contact information. I'll be happy to talk with you either through email or Skype and discuss the topic. If you have any questions or you have any comments or anything you want to know more about that is related to Saudi Arabia, I will be more than happy to talk with you. So that's it for my presentation. I hope you have enjoyed it so far. Thank you so much.